There's just 3 game weeks left this season and I'm going to help you with all 3 of your captain picks. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of these videos. I'm going to analyse all the data for Blank GW36 so you don't have to. I'll mention the best option at the end. I'll also mention a differential captain for those of you who are chasing. That's not usually my style, but that's easy for me to say when I'm ranked in the top 5k. Anyway, let's get straight into it and take a look at the shortlist. First up is Dominic Calvert Lewin. He's playing against Sheffield United at Goodison Park. They've got nothing to play for. Everton's playing for Europe and it's possibly the easiest fixture in game week 36. Second, we've got Mo Salah. He's playing against West Brom away from home. They've also got nothing to play for. Salah got a goal last night against Manchester United. We will look at his recovery time later on in the video, but you will also see that his underlying stats are very promising. Penultimately, we've got Harry Kane. He's playing against Wolves at home. His fixture isn't quite as easy, but Wolves have been leaking goals recently. In his last match, he was very unlucky. He got 2 goals ruled offside, 1 by a toenail, and he also hit the bar as well. And the last player on the shortlist is Sergio Aguero. Makes me happy to say that. He's up against Newcastle away from home. It's not the easiest of fixtures, but it's also not the toughest of fixtures, especially in that City attack. I wanted a City attacker, and all the players are a victim of Pep Roulette because they've had the league wrapped up. I wanted to get the one that's on penalties, and we know he can be explosive. Something to just bear in mind for Aguero is that his stats are based on a low sample size this season. I was going to combine them with last season's stats, but that would be unfair on the other players on the shortlist, and they wouldn't be recent stats anyway. At the end of the day, we know what the Argentinian is capable of, so we'll mainly focus on the odds for him. Before we dig into the stats, there's just a few honourable mentions. You could go for Son Heung-min. I just prefer Kane if we're going for a Spurs player. There's not much between them without penalties, but that penalty advantage is big for Kane. He's also got promising underlying stats, which you'll see later on in the video. Another option is Antonio. West Ham are fighting for Champions League football. He's playing against Brighton, who have Dunk suspended. You could go with a forward from the Burnley vs Leeds fixture, namely Bamford or Wood. Both teams leak goals, and both forwards are very capable of scoring plenty of goals. Another player to consider is Mahrez. Obviously, if anyone starts in that City attack, they are a good option. I just favoured Aguero because of the penalties. Also, I won't be considering any defenders because I like a nice high ceiling on my captain. Now let's take a look at the underlying stats through the course of this season. Straight away, we can see that Kane has the best stats for this season. He tops the expected assists, non-penalty expected goal involvement, goals and assists by quite a margin. He's only 0.06 behind DCL for non-penalty expected goals per 90 minutes as well, but you've got to give credit where it's due. It's really impressive from Calvert Lewin. The only downside to that is, you can see it with the goals per 90 minutes, he's not on penalties, Salah's on penalties for Liverpool, Kane's on penalties for Spurs, and Aguero's on penalties for City, and that is one big downside. Thinking about it, there's not a great deal between Salah and Kane. Yeah, Kane's outperforming his underlying stats by scoring over 1 goal per 90 minutes, which is really good, but the best way to predict future goals and assists is underlying stats themselves, and doing that, we use the expected goals model. Don't forget that Salah gets the extra 25% for the goals that he scores, and an extra clean sheet point as well. Before we move on to the next bit, I'd just like to reiterate that Aguero's stats are based on a low sample size. Over the course of the last 5 matches, unsurprisingly, Salah and Kane come out on top again. This time it's the Egyptian that comes out on top. He's averaging the most returns with nearly 1 per game, and his underlying stats are very promising. They're expecting him to get more than 1 return per game as well. That's not to take anything away from Kane though. He's just shy of 1 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 minutes in that period of time. Also, his stats are weighted heavily on goals rather than assists, which is better in FPL of course. He's topping the non-penalty expected goals and goals per 90 minutes. As for the other 2 players, DCL's stats aren't that bad, they just look bad compared to Salah and Kane's, and Aguero's stats actually are bad. Yeah, he might have a low sample size, but they've all got a low sample size over the course of the last 5 matches. But remember what both players are capable of and why they got included on the shortlist. Calvert Lewin's got an easy fixture and Aguero's got a nice high ceiling. Comparing the opposition's defence, Salah has the easiest fixture on the shortlist against West Brom. They've got the worst expected goals conceded per 90 minutes and goals against per 90 minutes in the league with 1.9 for each. Calvert Lewin faces the second worst defence in the league this season. They're just 0.1 behind on both the expected goals conceded and goals against per 90 minutes. Aguero has the 3rd easiest fixture on the shortlist against Newcastle, and their defensive numbers aren't much to shout about either. Kane has the toughest fixture on the shortlist by far against Wolves. As you can see, their defensive numbers are nowhere near as bad as the other teams. This is displayed through the clean sheet odds. Despite playing that good Spurs attack, they've got the highest probability of obtaining a clean sheet out of all the opponents on the shortlist. Something that doesn't fall in Calvert Lewin's favour is that Sheffield United are almost as likely to get a clean sheet as Wolves this game week. As for the West Brom and Newcastle defences, they're half as likely to obtain a clean sheet than Sheffield United this game week. This is something that benefits Salah and Aguero. Okay, so we know the probability of the opposition's defence getting a clean sheet. Well, what about the probability of each player scoring and assisting? Well, it's Salah who tops the anytime goal scorer and assisting odds. To be fair, Kane and Aguero aren't miles behind. They have a similar chance of returning, but Salah has the best chance of returning overall this game week. To back that up, he tops the Fantasy Football Hub points projections by 0.9 and the Fantasy Football Fix points projections by 0.7. And it is worth mentioning that Kane is above DCL and Aguero on both of the points projections. Now this next bit is where it gets interesting. The first player I'm going to eliminate is Calvert Lewin. He gets less than 3 days resting time, he's not got penalties like the other players on the shortlist, and he's got the worst anytime goal scorer / assisting odds. The second player that I'm going to eliminate is Sergio Aguero. He just doesn't quite match up to the other two players on the underlying stats. He's at a higher risk of rotation and his points projections lower as well. So we're down to a straight shootout between Salah and Kane. Now I'm not going to lie, before this stage I would have usually just said Salah, but taking a look at it, he's got 2 days and 18 hours recovery time and he played 90 minutes in his last match. That to me screams that he's not going to play 90 minutes. That itself is a big factor to consider. But on the flip side, Liverpool are competing for Champions League football, and surely Klopp would want to get as many minutes out of Salah as possible. So it's basically Salah against West Brom for around about 70 to 80 minutes, or Kane against Wolves for around about 90 minutes. Okay, so I've come to a conclusion. I'm tipping this player because he's in slightly better form. He's facing the team that have the worst defensive numbers in the league this season, and they have the lowest clean sheet odds this game week. He's got the highest anytime goal scorer and assisting odds. He tops the Fantasy Football Hub and Fantasy Football Fix points projections. He's got something to play for against a team that's already relegated. He gets an extra point for every goal that he scores, and he's got the potential to get a clean sheet point as well. And I think he'll be very popular for a reason this game week. It's Mo Salah. I mentioned at the start of the video, for those of you who are chasing, that I was going to name a differential captain. I can't look into the future and name the effective ownership of each player being captain, but I am pretty confident that Salah will be the most popular pick. Therefore, I don't think Kane's effective ownership will be anywhere near 200%. I always advise to go for the player who you think will score the most points and not base it on ownership, but I do think there's a decent chance that Kane could outscore Salah this game week. If you enjoyed the video, then drop it a like because it really helps me out, subscribe so you don't miss any future captain analysis videos, and drop a comment down below if you need any help ahead of Blank Game Week 36.